earlier, I concentrated on the analysis of linear systems. And the algorithm I used, I said that there are limitations because for simulation part, for a linear system, the input signal must be defined, must be given first. Then we can find the output of the system. And this is one limitation. We have to know the input first. And in the control systems, for instance, if there is a PID controller, then this signal is generated by a PID controller. It is not known before we solve the equation. So there is a limitation previously in the presentation for time domain responses. And also there is another limitation. It is restricted to linear systems only. For nonlinear systems, it cannot be used. So now let's talk about the simulation analysis of nonlinear fractional order systems. And for nonlinear fractional order system, I think the only way to analyze it is by the use of simulation method. So how can we perform simulation to nonlinear systems? And the key point in this part is how can we approximate a fractional differentiator by a filter? This is the most important part. And if you can approximate the fractional order differentiator by a filter, then you can use it in the system simulation. And since the fractional order differentiator is the basic element for fractional descriptions such as transfer functions, you can usually express a fractional order transfer function or nonlinear fractional order representation by the use of fractional order differentiators. So I will explain to them later to you. And for a filter, we normally use a continuous filter, and the well-known filter for this kind of problem is Austelot's filter, which is derived by a French scientist. And apart from this filter, we can also consider to do some modification to the filter because the ordinary Austelot filter is not quite the way we like. Sometimes there might be errors, so we can modify the filter and get better results. And if you approximate the original fractional order differentiator, then you may expect to get a transfer function of very high order, usually 40th order or even higher for certain systems. So for those kind of systems, we may consider optimal model reduction to fit the original fractional order transfer function by the use of integer order transfer functions, low order. And then we can design a fractional order differentiator, design a simulating block, and then we use a block to perform block diagram-based simulation for fractional order systems. And it can be used to solve linear and nonlinear differential equations of fractional orders. And then, again, we have to talk about the validation of simulation results. So now let's consider a filter. And we already explained why we need filters. Because if you have, if you do not use the filter, then you may not be able to express the fractional order nonlinear systems. So fractional order differentiator is the essential block we need to approximate.
We must use filter in every, for example, every design.
I think.
So we are assuming that the circuit, the design has some noise or something.
Yes.
All the time.
Well, if it is a fractional order system, then you have to do it. And let's consider this one. And actually, I will demonstrate that one later to you. You have, if you write it like this. So this could be the differentiation equivalent to the transfer function. That should be okay then. So what you need to do is to introduce y equals to u minus the derivative of y. And if we are trying to draw a block diagram, you have to define a y signal here. Right? You can define a y signal, and then since y signal equals to u minus this part, and if you can define a differentiator, you can construct a diagram like this to model the linear differential equation. And you can also model complicated differential equations as well. Even there is nonlinear terms, you can still model it. And in the system, you may see that this one is crucial. We have to find a way to express it in a systematical manner. So I will explain this one later to you. So filters might be essential. A filter approximation to fractional order differentiator is essential to analyze systems. And there are quite a lot of filters for fractional order differentiator. You check literature, you will find quite a lot. You may see for continuous filter there's Carlson differentiator, and there are others. And among them, I think the previous existing filters, the outflow one is the best. And I did some modifications on that one and make it even better. And also there are discrete versions of filters such as IIR filters, FIR filters. I think Professor Chen published a few papers on discretization of fractional order differentiators. Here I shall only concentrate on continuous filters. So now the question is how we can approximate a fractional order differentiator. Before that, for fractional order differentiators such as s to the power of 0.2, we know that the body diagram for it is a straight line with a slope of 20 times 0.2. It should be a straight line. Or if this one is gamma, then it should be 20 gamma. It is a straight line in body diagram. And the phase plot is also a straight line, horizontal line, which is pi gamma divided by 2, where gamma be 0.2 in this example. So for a pure fractional order differentiator, the body diagram should be straight lines. For integral system, we know it is a multiples of 20 dB per decade. And but it is not possible to fit a straight line